Well, welcome everyone. This session is on environmental plantings in practice, so hopefully we'll answer some of your questions today. My name's Hilary Connors. I work for the New South Wales Government in the Primary Industries and Productivity and Abatement Program. We will refer to that as PIPAP. So maybe I can write it down, but that's probably not the biggest takeaway of today anyway. So today we'll be hearing about the North Coast Carbon Capacity Building Program, and that has been a partnership between the New South Wales Government and local land services. It's been a program that has been established to help local landholders in the North Coast region, all about environmental plantings. So it was specifically designed to help deliver carbon farming support services, relevant to this region, and that's why we have Nikki and John from the North Coast Local Land Services. And it was also established because the New South Wales Government had a target to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. So we funded a full-time carbon officer, and it was a pilot program in two regions of New South Wales, the North Coast and the Riverina. And in the North Coast, it actually ended up being a job share between Nikki and John. So Local Land Services has supported this program, which is of New South Wales Department of Climate Change, Energy, Environment and Water. And the program was called the Living Carbon Grants Program. The grant program has now closed, but there is still support from Nikki and John in this region for people that are looking to establish these types of projects. And the three main kind of components, if you did undertake a Living Carbon Grants project, was that the project needed to be registered under the Australian Carbon Credit Unit Scheme, and that's ACUs. I think you might have heard that a couple of times over the last 2 days. And it needed to use the environmental plantings ACU method. So we'll get into that a bit more detail. The project must have also had a registered environmental account to measure biodiversity improvements on farm. And we'll talk about that today as well. Simon's going to cover off that, and that's the accounting for nature component to these projects. And the aim of that was to demonstrate that the carbon credits could be sold at a higher price if you could prove that those improvements had been made. And the last component of undertaking a Living Carbon Grants project was that you were willing to share your experiences. And we have like a number of videos. We're going to show a video in a second, just of one of the projects that did come through this program. So we might show that now.
My name's Tony, and this is a Bentley. The great-grandfather bought this out of Crown Land 1890, and it's come down through the generations, and hopefully it'll go through to my grandsons and granddaughters and so on. Yeah, I'm very proud of the place actually. Originally it was dairy, and then of course it's converted to beef cattle. Roughly 130 acres of the land has never been cleared, always been ridge bushland, and I've always had a dream that we'd convert it back to that whole section, wetlands, bushland, and this is what this is about. I spent years and years clearing the lantana off the ridges, and then when I heard about the Living Carbon project, I thought, wow, this is the way I can do something for the climate and also get my section of farm back to how it originally was. 25 acres here is a project of revegetation. So the whole 150 acres will be just natural forest.
The main role here of Local Land Services is to assist the landholder with a planting plan. So the planting plan maps out all the features that are required for a successful planting.
So the process for the landholders is to first establish a planting plan for their site. They need to ensure that they're eligible and then register that plan with the Clean Energy Regulator so that they're eligible for carbon credits. But in this program, we also are supporting the landholders to get Accounting for Nature accreditation so that their carbon credits have the addition of biodiversity certification. For landholders to be eligible, they need to have cleared land of a minimum of around about 10 hectares to make it worthwhile.
Well, this planting is not only about sequestering carbon from the atmosphere, it's also creating habitat for plants and animals, and particularly threatened plants and animals. The vegetation on these floodplains has been overly cleared, and there's actually a threatened ecological community that supports red gum and swamp mahogany. And some of the particular threatened species is koala in this area, arboreal mammals such as gliders, and also a range of threatened plant species as well. The planting method here really lends itself to being maintained by the landholder, particularly the use of tractor and slashing. So this is why we planted in rows. The landholder will be able to slash down these rows to maintain the site in the short term. In the longer term, because of the high density of planting here, about 1,600 plants per hectare, we anticipate the site to be captured under a forest canopy within a 3 to 5 year time frame. So maintenance then drops away when the forest canopy forms.
So Tony was eligible for the Quality Assurance Project, which means that the growth of his trees don't need to be surveyed and measured every 12 months. It means that the growth of the trees can be measured just from the satellite imagery. John and I are establishing the baseline monitoring under the Accounting for Nature scheme. These permanent sites will be monitored periodically over the 25 years of the project to show an improvement in biodiversity gain as a result of doing this planting project. Our advice for other landholders that might be thinking about entering into an environmental planning project in the North Coast is to make sure that your values are aligned with improving the environment and biodiversity on your land first up, because there is a strong commitment to maintain and to manage these environmental plantings over the 25-year period.
If I was doing this again, I think I would try to find another landowner who has done it. I've been extremely fortunate. I've had a person who has known the game, has known everybody, and I see him every week to debrief with him. If you had cows on this land, you don't make very much money because it's wetland, it's not the best grass in the world, and up in the forest there's virtually no cattle. I think you would make more money with just carbon credits. What's more important is the long-term environmental, which is worth more than money.
Okay, so to kick things off today, well, we're going to hear from our three speakers here, so I might introduce them all and then I'll hand over to John, who's going to kick us off. So John and Nikki are both senior land service officers in the North Coast region. John has built his career around rainforest restoration on the North Coast and is a passionate native seed collector and propagator. And Nikki has worked on land management and conservation projects on the North Coast for the last 8 years and is based in Coffs Harbour. She's also a passionate bush regenerator. And I'll introduce Simon as well at this point. Simon works with me. We're in the same team at New South Wales Government at the Department of Climate Change, Energy, Environment and Water. And Simon grew up on a mixed farm in the Riverina and has worked most of his professional career in natural resource management, and is currently part of the PIPAP program, which is helping to reduce emissions in agriculture and land management sectors as part of the government's commitment to net zero. So to kick us off, John is going to cover the planting plan and implementation considerations for an environmental plantings project. If anyone has questions, we can take those along the way. If we're starting to get close on time, we might just hold them to the end. But yeah, feel free to raise your hand because we want to have an interactive session. So yeah, I'll hand over you, John. Sorry.
What a fantastic video. Congratulations, Nikki and the team for putting that together. Tony Davis has a property at Bentley, and he's one of our participating landholders in the Living Carbon project. So as you can see, the content of our speakers, I'm going to be tackling the planting plan. So all great projects and success, doing anything successful relies on a good plan. There are many types of plans around. We were guided by Simon and Hilary from Department of Climate Change, Energy, the Environment and Water, gave us a template, a plan structure to work with landholders and to populate that template with the important aspects, firstly of the site, particularly soils, how well drained it is, what the surrounding vegetation's like, so we can get an idea of re-establishing a forest that used to occur on that site. So this is not just the carbon sequestration aspect of the project, but the environmental outcome of establishing a forest that occurred on that site, or at least getting species in to kickstart, to give some structure to a diverse forest over the long term. So we couldn't have done the project without landholders such as Tony. Yeah, they took a risk. They went out on a limb. They applied for the grant, and Nikki and I assisted the landholders through that application process, developing the planting plan, and the landowners being awarded the grant, which has come from New South Wales DQ through Simon and Hilary's team. So local land services has had a very important role there between the funding body, New South Wales Government, and the landholder to assist with the planting plan. So the planning also includes the landholder meeting and engaging with providers, people who can undertake the planting, put the trees in the ground, and also the nurseries that provide the planting stock. So we're talking about tube stock. I'll need to step sideways here. Oh, my show bag. Sorry, I had to alter the where that show bag come from. Hopefully that supermarket won't take me to court. But we're talking about tube stock, okay, or HICO cells. Now, HICO is probably about half the size of that other tube stock, so HICO can be of that capacity or slightly larger. So we're putting tube stock in on our sites. Direct seeding is another option, but not so much for this region. As we would all know, that bare ground doesn't stay bare for very long in this area, whether you've applied a herbicide to kill grass or you've cultivated it. That bare ground will grow many weeds, soft weeds and other grasses very quickly and smother any
germination from broadcasting of native seed. But direct seeding is obviously used in many other parts of the state where it's drier and there are less ground weeds. Oh, we've jumped to the next slide. Good. Okay, so planting plans are full of good images of the property. It's quite easy now, easier to get satellite imagery or aerial imagery, even historical imagery of what your property looked like and what it looks like now. So a base map is important. This is another site we hope to do in the future. It's on ex-cane land, and you can see the cane drains that are running through about a 15 hectare floodplain site. So it's important to work out not just the natural features of your site, but what are the risks to a planting. We want success, we want the trees to grow, but what are the risks that are going to affect the growth of trees or their survival? So these are things like flooding, these are things like drought, and other risks such as wildfire. So we'll go to the next slide. That's right. We're back to the Bentley property, which was featured in the video we saw. And again, another great image. The yellow boundaries there are the planting areas of about 10 hectares, which was sort of the minimum for the living carbon grants. Importantly, the site here has been broadened and is a connection between the forested areas on Tony's property across here and also up to an adjoining nature reserve in the Bentley area. So fairly busy configurations there. So we work around the existing forest. So the natural vegetation there has given us a guide of what used to occur on the cleared parts of the property. So we have a floodplain area and we can look at the species that are remnant there, such as forest red gum particularly, and it grades up into hill slope areas, so we're looking at more sort of drier sclerophyll. So the planting is dominated by sclerophyll species. These are our eucalypts, acacias, casuarinas, those sorts of things. There are some rainforest species that occur, but generally this is a eucalypt forest landscape in this area. So there's quite a few different ways to prepare the site, and this was a landowner contribution. So part of the grant required landholder input, either financial input or their own time, of course. So grasses have to be controlled for a successful planting. So herbicide application is the usual and accepted method, and whether you prepare the site by strip spraying, as you can see there on the left, or an innovative technique that Tony developed, his son driving and him doing spots at certain distances. So this established the density of the planting. Around about, I think, was 1,600 trees per hectare, which is about 2 by 3 metres spacing on average. We got a bit closer in some areas and wider in others. You might increase the density along a creek bank, a riparian area. Certainly some of our rainforest plantings we see in the area are upwards of 2,000, 2,500 trees per hectare. So, you know, the idea is to get the canopy to form as quickly as you can to help shade out the grasses and the weeds. You don't want to be a slave to maintaining in the medium and long term with wide spacing. So we do plant densely, and the trees will fight it out over time. I don't really need my notes, so we'll go to the next one. So there's many ways to plant trees. And again, aiming for success, we want to get a good product. We want a good, healthy tube stock or hyco tube stock. Generally, these days, rainforest trees are growing in these tubes to 30, 40, 50, 60 centimetres. So it's important to get quality plants. So talk to your nurseries or get your contractor who's getting the plants to make sure the plants are of particular quality, and don't accept poor quality plants. Take them back, get them exchanged. A lot of the eucalypt species do get, eucalypt forest or sclerophyll species do get grown in the hyco cells or in smaller tubes. There are options to buy plants in larger containers. In fact, the fellows at the Tucky project site in Lismore, they grow all their plants in 200 or 8-inch pots and dig the holes. So they're planting trees that are this high in their pots, and amazing results. But they're not planting 15,000 trees, such as this project. So look, various techniques. The school of thought is either going in a manual planting using a tree spade here on the left. The chap isn't wearing the apron, which can hold up to 30 or 40 trees either side in the apron, as well as fertiliser and water crystals if required, and a planting spade. So the manual planter is self-sufficient out in the paddock and being fed more plants with backup vehicles. The other image is showing a mechanised planting, and you probably will see this used, say, in the macadamia industry. These are actually pecans that are going in. So mechanical planting, and you can see a driver, 2 on the back and someone walking behind. So there's 4 people at least there working in a mechanical planting method. The tea tree industry rely on this planting because they're putting in 25,000 or more tubes per hectare. Okay, seed collection. I think I was introduced as being a passionate seed collector, and I have been ever since moving to the area in the early 80s. This is also about species selection as well, this slide. But what we have achieved with this project is the majority of plants we've planted through the projects have been grown from seed collected within the region. So over the years, nurseries have had to rely on purchasing seed, eucalypt seed, from unknown sources, from seed merchants that may have collected anywhere between, say, Mackay and Melbourne. So we've set the challenge and achieved a remarkable thing, really, I feel, and we've relied on the seed bank, which is based in Coffs Harbour. And this is their product. The North Coast Seed Bank, look, there's the future there. Just add sunlight and water and there's a forest of turpentines, Syncarpia glomulifera. So the seed bank at the Botanic Gardens in Coffs are receiving seed through LLS funded as well as the gardens funding, working through Landcare, who are collecting through their volunteers, and the seeds are being deposited and withdrawn to be grown on for projects such as this. So if you're purchasing plants from your nursery, specify, say you want plants grown from seed collected in the region. And if the nursery person doesn't know where to get that seed, well, there's a facility at the seed bank in Coffs Harbour to assist. Another smaller bag there of Costemon viminalis, weeping bottlebrush. all are coded, so they're stored, and the gardens are undertaking some germination trials so they can vouch for the viability. You know, how many seedlings will germinate per gram. How are we going for time? And this is I love this slide. Tree protection. Okay, well, obviously you need to protect your trees from livestock. So if you've got livestock and cattle, llamas, sheep, whatever, you'll need a stock-proof fence. But also specifically around the plants that you've planted will invariably need protection, particularly from native herbivores such as wallabies and kangaroos. So one of the two sort of options up in the top right is actually, there's an economy of scale here, of course, to pen in, or fence if you wish, with star picket and mesh to exclude wallabies from a planting area. So it means you don't have to put individual tree guards. You've penned out, meshed out an area. And that works well if you can get the mesh fence easily across the landscape, so flat sites particularly, or not undulating. So the alternative then is tree guards, and there's many of them around. We specified we would want biodegradable, so they'll break down on site and not leave microplastics, such as the middle slide photo is the core flute material. Yeah. There is another type of guard, and they're often made of a plastic mesh, and you can get a bit of life out of these. So these non-degradable guards need to come off at some stage. So there's another job or another cost associated, whereas biodegradables will collapse and disappear. So the far left is the mulch these days. When I used to do it, it was bales of straw, about 8 or 10 trees per bale. And if you left those bales out in the rain, man, they weighed quite a bit. So the go these days is these jute, again biodegradable product, jute squares as a mulch mat or a weed mat. And there's a range of different designs. Generally, they're about 400 millimetres, 40 centimetres square. The other interesting guard is this one here, and it actually has a material flap underneath that folds in and gives you a mulching result. So there's a tree guard that mulches as well. Pretty fancy, eh? Okay, I think we're getting close to the end of the slide. So I think Hilary mentioned, and we'll cover it again, is the environmental outcome of our plantings needs some form of measurement. So Accounting for Nature is an organisation that's developed a range of methods, some simple, some more complex. We're using what's known as the land care native vegetation method, which is fairly simple, so the landholder can carry on with the monitoring once we've assisted them and set that up. It does require putting some plots on the ground, 10 by 10 metres, and recording what the ground cover is at planting, and see how that ground cover changes as the forest develops. It's also based on photographic monitoring as well from a fixed point. There can also be drone and aerial or satellite imagery as well over time, seeing how the planting is going and the canopy is closing. There are infill planting options in some of the methods, and this might be an added bonus that a landholder may do to put other species in there. I've always been keen on just getting those plants or those species in the ground that are going to perform well on the site. You might have had ex-rainforest country and it supported 90 species. Well, probably half of those rely on the canopy formation before they can fill the ground layer or mid-story. So get those really hardy starting species in, you know, get the structure going, and infill planting or natural recruitment, birds and other pollinators and dispersers will bring seed in from other areas. Just on that point, one of the big risks to our planting is invasion from weeds. So if the adjoining vegetation to your site has got weeds in it, it's best to get rid of those because they will move from the remnant vegetation into your planting, you know, such as the woody weeds of camphor laurel and lantana, but more insidious things such as vine weeds and privet as well. That could be the last slide for me. No, it's not. Look at this one. Whoa. This is that nature reserve that's immediately to the east of the property at Bentley, and all those dots are records of threatened plant and animal species. So this is the BioNet site. I haven't really touched on the tools. You can go to websites that have got lots of information. So BioNet is where threatened plants and animals have been mapped. And obviously the nature reserve has had, being public land, has had more of a look in. But you can extrapolate same vegetation or aspects or features on the nature reserve if they're on, and they are on Tony Davis's property, then some of these species, such as the Wampu fruit dove and the glossy black cockatoo, which we all know loves the cones of the forest oak tree. So put those in. Put those species in that are going to directly support these species, and koala, of course. Powerful owl, well, we're waiting for probably hollows to form or possums to move in for tucker, for the powerful owl. And gliders as well, of course, need canopy trees and hollows as well, which are way down the track. That's about me.
I'll take over. Does that work? Okay, cool. Okay, so John and I taking on this Living Carbon project was almost like we had to learn about probably what a carbon service provider would provide to the community. So we had to, well, we learned as we went with the landholder about the registering of these projects with the Clean Energy Regulator, and obviously the method under the Clean Energy Regulator that we used was environmental plantings. So this is some information here about the environmental plantings. So we had to do a lot of administration. So this is, it's like an experiment for a landholder to enter the program on their own, basically. So Simon's team and Hillary's team did come up with this concept that let's support local land services to support local landholders to do it themselves without having that middleman as the carbon, and be in control of their the whole project, really. And it's pretty, there's a lot in it. It's pretty hard. And most landholders that I know like to be out in the paddock and having their hands dirty, not really sitting in front of the computer, filling out multiple forms and reports and things like that. So that's what John and I have learnt doing this project. And it's coming towards the end. This it might continue to the end of the year, but with some support from our Natural Capital program. But we've been hacking away at it for a couple of years. It's just about to end in a month or so. But we can say that it hasn't been easy. Just the terms themselves. And we've learnt that and held landholders' hands like Tony to set up what's called an Australian National Registry of Emissions Units, which is basically a bank account to store your carbon credits. So you can start crediting your project from 6 months, and you can credit, I believe, every 6 months to 5 years at minimum intervals. So, you know, setting up one of these bank accounts for carbon credits, so you can store your carbon credits in this account and then choose to trade them. We don't know much about that space. That's up to the landholder and all the financial decisions that they would need to make themselves. But we certainly held Tony's hand in setting up the project under the Clean Energy Regulator to start with. So that's the Environmental Plantings Project. Now, all of our customers, which was only the 3 that came along and actually put the plants in the ground, they opted to do just a 25-year project. You can opt to do 100 years, where I believe you can, there's variables, but some, Ben yesterday was saying that he opted for a 100-year project in his plantations method that he's selected. Anyway, this is a really good tool if anyone's thinking about doing it. It's called Plan R, and you can go on and map your project. You can create shape files. So the mapping and the shape files was another job that we did for the landholders. And that this website is available and online, free, and you can check your eligibility for different sorts of carbon projects and nature repair and that sort of thing. There's just an example there off their website. Yeah, and so the registering your carbon project, your environmental plantings project in this case, it involves a lot of documentation. So I'll just run through them. It's pretty dry, but you know you need the planting plan, which isn't dry. That's awesome. Thanks, John. The planting plan, which is available, the template from the Local Land Service website. It equates to what they require, which is like a reforestation management plan. But the planting plan actually has more guiding timelines and more guidance really within it, where you could actually take it off the shelf and use it and refer to it with a bit more detail than the basic requirement, which is a reforestation management plan. A permanence plan, I've got a quick slide about that next. You have to estimate how many tonnes per carbon that this planting is going to generate over 25 years. So that can be done on a website called Look-See, which is a CSIRO website. It's spelled LOOC-CE. Maybe we can put that one up there. Thanks, because that's a really handy one as well. A really handy tool if you're trying to estimate your area and how many credits you can expect to generate after all your hard work of maintaining these plantings. So, and it has to be the plan and the whole project has to be in line with a local natural resource management plan, which the Local Land Services have these done all this background reporting for the region. There's a copy of the front page there. So moving on, the permanence plan is just like a risk management plan. So you have to consider bushfires and floods, these, and what's going to happen if you nursed 16,000 plants and the bushfire came through in 5 or 10 years' time? Do you have to pay back credits? This is a common question that people ask. I've heard it a few times. The answer that we've got from the Clean Energy Regulator is no. You don't have to pay it back. They'll work with you until you re-establish again or get the plants growing again. And then the crediting periods would be paused until the growth happened again, whether that happened again from the existing root stock or some more infill planting. And that's just a copy of what the template looks like, which is pretty basic to fill out to support your carbon registration project if you were wanting to do it yourself. So I wanted to demonstrate that there is a lot of paperwork, but And the Clean Energy Regulator also are really approachable. It seems like they're so far away. They are in Canberra. They're the Commonwealth government. But you can actually ring them up and they will help you to get started. If you've got the time and you wanted to control your project like this, then there is help available with the federal government to do it. And that's me. Thanks.
Okay, so is that on? That's on? Yep. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the biodiversity side. So you've heard a lot now about the planting projects themselves from John, and then the registering as a carbon project from Nikki. Ooh, that's terrible colours. Okay. So before I jump into the biodiversity, I just want to have a step back and just set the scene a little bit. So we've spoken very specifically about planting trees under the environmental plantings method with the Clean Energy Regulator. So there's two components to this. So one, if you plant your trees, you can get it certified as a carbon project, but there are also now some options about certifying the biodiversity components. So just going on the carbon certification, the main program that's available in Australia is the Australian Carbon Credit Unit Scheme, run by the Australian Government's Clean Energy Regulator. As you heard yesterday from Richard Heath, if you listened to that topic, he was talking about this is a very well-respected, very well-established program. There are multiple vegetation methods. So the first one there, reforestation by environmental plantings, that's what we've been talking about today. There are a couple of other options. So plantation forestry, if any of you were in the room here yesterday with Ben Harrington talking about Forest Farm down the road, that's a plantation forestry method that's absorbing carbon that can be accredited under the scheme. And there's also a blue carbon method, which is removing barriers that have been set up to stop the tidal flow into estuaries so that the land could be used for grazing. We can now remove those barriers and let the tidal flows come in and re-establish those coastal wetlands. Then that will absorb more carbon. So there are a couple of options there. There's also a couple of new methods in development as well. So the integrated farm and land management method, it's been in development for quite a few years, but the public consultation's just closed, so hopefully it'll be coming later this year, maybe early next year. One of the options under that is natural regeneration. So what it'll enable you to do with the integrated farmland management is to do multiple projects on the same property. So you might plant one area out using the environmental plantings method, but there might be another area, it might be very steep, it's very difficult to get to, but if it will naturally regenerate itself and regrow a forest, then you can monitor that and claim the carbon credits from it as well. So watch your space, particularly up here. Obviously things grow very well up here, not just the weeds, if you can get the natural forest to regrow. There's another one, avoiding re-clearing and native reforestation. That's in development as well. So that's if you have the ability to clear land legally and you do that on a regular basis. If you make a management decision to stop doing that and the forest regrows, then you can earn carbon credits from that as well. So that's the main program that we use in Australia. There are a couple of other commercial, international schemes that are available. They have a range of different methods as well. So going over to biodiversity certification, now the Australian Government Clean Energy Regulator also has the nature repair market. So this is very new, only started last year, and there's only one method at the moment. It's called replanting native forest and woodland ecosystems. Now the great thing about this method, it has been written to work very closely with the environmental plantings method under the carbon program. So if you're going to plant a forest, if you tick the boxes under the left-hand side, you'll be able to get your carbon credits. If you tick the boxes on the right-hand side, it might mean just having a greater species diversity, then you can get a biodiversity certificate as well. So two outcomes from the one project. So this is a bit of a game changer. It makes it much easier to try and do two things at the same time. And because they're both run by the same organisation, in theory, the administration should be a lot easier as well. As I said, it is brand new. There's actually only one project in Australia that's already managed to get through the process of registration, but there are others working on it. So it's something that will slowly become more popular over the next couple of years.
If you do one, are you automatically enrolled in the other?
No. No, you have to tick the box that you want to do both, and you have to set up a plan. So Nikki talked about the reforestation management plan that you have to write for the carbon side of things. You have to also write a plan for the biodiversity side as well. So they have their own requirements, the two schemes. So you just need to make sure that you tick the boxes if you want to do both of them.
They're not
Not automatically, no. To do both of them? Yep. I mean, you can just go and plant trees right now. You don't have to do this. There's a lot of administration involved, like Nikki explained. So if you just want to go and plant a couple of hectares, go for it. You can run a calculator. It'll tell you how many tonnes of carbon you've stored. You can go and see there might be a koala there in a few years' time. You can just do that. But if you want to get some carbon credits, if you want to get a biodiversity certificate, so that's particularly if you want to try and sell this and make some money from it, or if you're a farmer and you want to sell carbon neutral beef and you're trying to prove that you're absorbing a certain amount of carbon, or you want to sell a story that your beef is coming from a property that has koalas, that it's being run on a naturally regenerative focus, whatever it is, then this is a way of you proving what you're doing with some sort of independent auditing processes attached to it. So yeah, certainly no requirement for you to do it at this point in time. It's all voluntary. There are a couple of other methods in development under the nature repair market, and I just point these out because the enhancing native vegetation one is being aligned with those regeneration options under the carbon program, and the protect and conserve method is being aligned with that avoiding clearing method. So there is a conscious effort here to try and align these. If you're going to do a particular project in the vegetation space, that you will hopefully be able to do both carbon and biodiversity crediting, if you want to. Unfortunately, 3 years ago when we started this design of the Living Carbon program, the nature repair market didn't exist. They've been talking about it for a few years, a lot of politics involved in it, and we had to use something. What there was is the Accounting for Nature program. So this is a not-for-profit organisation, very long-term development. I think 2008 to 2018, the methodology was developed from the Wentworth group of concerned scientists. It was then brought across, set up under Accounting for Nature. So quite robust, again, sort of world-leading research in developing it. It's Australian. And there's quite a few methods. So from vegetation, there's actually now 14 different methods that you can use for monitoring vegetation improvements. And there's 5 different native fauna methods. So that includes specific things like koalas, but also things like bird counts or mammals. So setting up camera traps to see what mammals come back in. So it's all focused on proving what the improvements in biodiversity have been over time. Now, beyond environmental plantings, they also have water quality, soil improvements, a whole range of other things as well. I will also just mention the Biodiversity Conservation Trust. It comes up every now and then. There's sometimes a little bit of confusion across all these components. The BCT's been around for quite a few years now, and they do have biodiversity certificates. So there's a couple of options. So biodiversity stewardship agreements, you can earn credits from those, and there's a various range of conservation agreements. The main thing about the Biodiversity Conservation Trust is they're focused on protecting remnant vegetation that's already there. So it's not about planting new trees in the ground. Whereas the carbon projects, particularly environmental plantings, it's taking a cleared paddock and planting new trees. So that's the main distinction between them. The lines are blurring a little bit, particularly when we start talking about the regeneration methods for carbon. And the BCT, after sort of many years of protecting the existing remnants, they're actually starting to look at other options of supplementing those with plantings. So they've done a pilot project down in the Murray region where landholders who had some good remnant vegetation could protect that remnant, but also adjacent to that, do a carbon planting where they would get the carbon credit income for 25 years to help that. And at the end of the 25 years, that carbon planting would be joined in with the long-term remnant protected area. So particularly useful if you had like 2 pieces of good remnants and you want to try and fill in the gap to make a corridor across, then that's a good option. So that's a pilot they've been running the Murray. They are talking about looking at whether they can expand that across the rest of the state. So watch this space. If you've got some area of your property that already has good land, that you can put that under a covenant and you would get some income from that to help maintain it, but also potentially plant a new area which would get the 25 years of carbon credit income and then move across and be part of that ongoing income from the other option. So that's the broader picture, just to set the scene. Forget about all the stuff except what's highlighted. We're going to go back now to the Environmental Plantings Carbon Project and the accounting for nature, the vegetation and the native fauna methods. So what's an environmental account? So if you go home tonight, look up environmental accounts or specifically accounting for nature, do a search for them, you'll come up with a map. I've just zoomed in here and screen captured the area. So we're in Clunes here today. These pins on the map, the sort of greenish coloured ones, these are registered accounts. So the video we saw earlier, the Bentley property we refer to, so that the locality of Bentley, they have registered their account, but they're still in the process now of collecting all the data and doing their first report. Once they've done their report and it all gets approved, it'll become a certified account, and you can see the blue pins. There's a few of those on the map. So you can see a bit more detail of those, and in a minute I'll give you an example of the 2 of those. Before I move on, there's just something about the certified. So the blue pins, they've been certified by the landholder themselves, or with the help, in this case, with John and Nikki, and they submit it to the Accounting for Nature, and Accounting for Nature does a tick box check that everything's been done correctly, and so it's verified by Accounting for Nature. If you want to go to the next level and get the independent verification, then you have to get a qualified expert to come in. It'll cost a lot of money, but then you get this independent audit certified. So what we're testing here is how much does the market want as far as proof. There's a whole range of different things that you can do here.
There's none that have been certified in that area?
Not in this area here. Oh, sorry, the independent ones. There's not. There's not many. If you zoom out, there are some around the country. But they do cost, $20,000 or something like that to do. So yeah, you've got to know that you're going to get a reasonable outcome from it. So. Is there any benefit? Well, that's the $1 million question, isn't it? So this is all fairly new. We started this 3 years ago. I think there was 2 projects in New South Wales, and there's now something like 25. About half of them have been supported through the PIPAP program. So the state government is actually encouraging people to do this stuff, and largely the whole biodiversity market's all brand new. We don't know what the outcomes are going to be, but these are the pioneers. They're out there, they're testing it, and we will see. And that's a large part of what our program is. What we wanted to do with supporting landholders to do the carbon project is to at least get this baseline information in place, get an environmental account in place, and we'll see what we can earn extra from that. Just something very briefly, when you sell your carbon credits, there's not really a very clear process. It's not like the stock market. Nobody really knows all the deals that go on. There is quite a lot of data is collected. You can go and search ACCU spot price, and you'll get some information of what the current price is and see some graphs. The Clean Energy Regulator does some reports as well. Now, the price for a standard Australian Carbon Credit Unit, ACCU. It's been sitting around the $35 to $40 mark per tonne or per ACCU. Now, what we hear is that there's actually a variation depending on the type of carbon credits. So the very expensive ones tend to be savanna burning up in the far north of New South Wales that are being run by Indigenous organisations. The corporates are prepared to pay a lot more money for that because there's a very good story about that in the background. We've heard that as a general rule, environmental planting projects tend to sell for maybe $5 a tonne more, just because people can understand them. So if you go and buy an air ticket, the airline might say, are you prepared to pay $20 more to offset your flight? We'll go and plant a tree for you. They don't say, we'll go to a local landfill site and we'll flare the methane gas off to convert it to carbon dioxide. People get lost in that. So the whole concept of planting trees, people can understand it. So it's worth a little bit more. What we want to know is if you actually provide the evidence of your particular planting, that the koalas have come back or whatever it is, can we up it more than that $5? So some of you might have heard about the koala projects here that on this particular property through the WWF program. They have sold their credits for significantly higher amount because they are specifically planting koala habitat, and they've now had their first koala has appeared within 3 years of the planting. So.
Does that higher carbon credit cost translate into a larger benefit for the companies purchasing them?
It's all on the story they want to sell. So.
As a purchaser, why would you pay more than what you had to for the same product?
Yep, exactly. So it depends on why the company is doing it. If they're just trying to tick the box that they need to offset some emissions, they'll buy the cheapest whatever they can. But there's a lot of pressure from shareholders on companies now as well. There's a lot of environmental accountability. There's legislations come down that large organisations, it'll start filtering down to the smaller ones, they have to do environmental accounts every year as part of their annual accounting. They have to report on their environmental footprint. So there is more and more pressure coming on. You know, it's sort of started with the carbon emissions, but it's now spreading to their broader environmental footprint as well. So it is very early days in the biodiversity market. There's a lot of corporate organisations of setting money aside to work out their environmental footprints from the carbon emissions or greenhouse emissions side of things. They're only just starting to think about their broader water quality impacts or biodiversity impacts, that side of things. So it's going to take a few years, but I guess the take-home message, if you're going to do an environmental planting now for carbon, maybe think about whether it's worth at least getting your baseline in for your environmental survey for the biodiversity. It's really quite simple. If you're planting a grassy paddock, you go out there, you do a survey, what's the canopy cover? Nothing. It's not that hard to set up the baseline. In 5 years' time, you can then prove that there's been an improvement in that planting from the environmental side, not just the carbon sides. Okay, 2 examples. So we're going to look at Tony's place at Bentley, and we're also going to look at the Forest Farm property. If any of you were in the presentation here yesterday from Ben Harrington, just to show you an example of a certified account. So the Bentley property. At the moment, if you click on that map, it'll open up this here. There's just a couple of pages, very simple overview of the project. It's got the area, 10.5 hectares. It's got the method, V for vegetation, 06, that's the land care method. It's one of the simplest methods. It was developed by Landcare with Accounting for Nature, designed specifically to try and get people to do it themselves if they've got a bit of knowledge on it. That's your basic fast facts. A little bit of a description about the account. So, what John was talking about, the restoring threatened species for koalas, glossy black cockatoos, etc. And very brief about the landholder themselves and what they're trying to achieve. So that's all that's there at the moment. Once the first... Yep, sorry. Right, cool. once the first report has been done, so the first monitoring, then it can be certified, and the website will have this certification passport, and you can flick through these and just see the further information. So this project at Tintumbar, at the Forest Farm, they're actually converting a plantation into a long-term permanent forest. So they've got permission to clear it, and they've made a decision not to. And they can earn carbon credits for that because they're not going to clear it. They also want to turn it into a koala habitat. But as you can see, single species monoculture. So they have used not the land care method, but a koala method. So again, a bit more information. That's all the basics like we had before. Basic information on the account. So here, using the koala method, so there's 105 hectares. Koala habitat, what you have is an econ, an ecological condition. So 100 out of 100 is basically, that's what it would have looked like originally. That's a perfect restored condition. So they've got a 43 out of 100 for koala habitat condition. So obviously they've got some trees there that are okay for koalas, but it doesn't have enough mix in it. It's not good enough for a long-term sustainability. Koala population. They've done survey plots on the ground counting koala scats. Didn't find anything. 0 out of 100. Over time, next time, they're hoping that both of these will increase. And that's what you're documenting here on your website, showing it. So here's a graph. There's the 2 dots for the 2 different things that they measured. And then over time, when they do their next report, hopefully they've both increased. Just a bit more detail and links to the technical report. But that's basically what you're promoting to the general public of what you're doing on your website. You don't have to make your account public if you don't want to, but if you want to make it public, and particularly if you're looking at selling this here, and if you want to link it to your carbon project, then that's what it looks like.